somewhere in the world right now, someone's having like the worst day of their life. Somewhere else in the world, someone's having the best day. So the day is objectively is neither good nor bad. It's just how those individuals perceive it. And the moment that you take full responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you can change anything in your life.
This is the Better Life Podcast with Brandon Turner and my good friend,
Cam Cathcart.
Cam Cathcart. So Cam and I last night went to a buddy's house and we had a good time, played some games. We talk about a little bit on today's show. And I came away ahead on a lot of money and you lost a lot of money. Story of our life.
Yes, I came away with $0. So
yeah, that was a good time though. Well, it was good hanging out.
it was a blast.
Yeah, we went up to Poli also, which is a sick spot on the side of the mountain, and watch the sunset with our families.
I am confident that that's what heaven will be like.
It's going to be just like that. Kids running through the field and paragliders going over your head. It was great. Anyway, what's up, man?
How much, dude?
Well,
Life is great.
Life is great. There's no bad days, man. No bad days. No
Way to
bad
tie it
days.
in.
See what I did there?
We did buy a house during that episode.
Did you really?
Yes.
That's
yes.
funny. Well
I
done.
mean, we're overpaying $20,000 for it, but
Why are you overpaying $20,000?
well, I don't think we are. So here, asymmetrical bet.
Okay.
So the ARV is 240 for sure, no doubt in our mind. Our rehab's dialed in, and so with that, buying it at 110, we are projected to make $15,000, which is not a lot.
No.
Like that, that's why our offer should be at around 90.
Okay.
But there is the chance that it could go for 265, 270. So don't think that'll happen. I think it'll probably fall in between that 240 to 260 number. So it's not going to be a home run, but we're not going to lose money. We're still going to make 15 grand. So it's kind of like a asymmetrical bet where it's like, we're going to make 15 grand. That's not great, but it's fine. But we have the chance to make 45.
Congrats, man. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of no bad days and buying real estate, today's guest is Mr. Jeffrey Holst. He's just an amazing dude. I've known Jeff for a number of years now, and he is a real estate investor, really good with like the Midsize multifamily, which is one of my like 19 cash flow vehicles that I've been talking a lot about within the Better Life Tribe, the things that work today in 2024. He also does a lot of other things, and he's had cancer, and he goes through all of that. He's had a super interesting life. He's like the most interesting man in the world kind of a character. So
Yeah.
all that and more to come. All right. With that said, I think we got to bring in Jeff because Jeff's amazing and this interview is awesome.
Let's do it.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Turbo Tenant and Ballpoint Marketing. These two companies are big supporters of the show, and they know how to work with real estate investors and help real estate investors grow their businesses. So be sure to stay tuned to hear how you can get, discounts and free stuff from them both. And as you probably know, all the profits from this show go to charities of the guest choosing. So when you listen to the sponsors on the show and you work with these hand-chosen by me sponsors, you're actually doing good for the world. Now let's get to the show.
Jeff Holst, man, welcome to The Office.
Thank you.
The Office, like we're a TV show. Welcome to The Office. I'm Dwight Schrute. This is my buddy.
Hey, did you guys
Michael
know? I saw this on Instagram today that Prison Mike and Michael Scott were the same actor.
That's amazing. I had no idea.
I did
No,
not
I
know
saw that today and I was blown away by it.
I had no idea.
It's crazy.
Well, there's all the people who don't watch The Office who have no idea what we're talking about right now. Hey, Jeff Holst. So Jeff Holst, one of my favorite humans in the world. I know you as a real estate investor. I know you've been investing for a long time. I know you do a lot of different types of investing, including catamarans, which maybe we'll talk about later.
Ooh.
I know you travel around multiple areas, including Puerto Rico. I know you raise money sometimes. I know you do very creative deals. I know you got a ton of strategies. I know that you are a leukemia survivor, do we say, and fighter.
Fighter. Let's go with fighter.
Well, you're surviving and fighting and have been for quite some time.
I actually kind of take issue to that fight thing. Like people say, like they
Yes.
fought a great battle, and it's like, no, like listen, you're not a fighter. You're not like brave if you have cancer. like you just have cancer, and if you don't want to die, you really have no choice. You just like take the drugs, go to your doctor's appointments, and hope it works out.
There might be something mental. You're a mental fighter.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. There
no
could be
bad
a
days.
mental. There definitely could be a mental issue. It is important. I think the not having bad days, and like when I was diagnosed, in fact, my brother came into the hospital the day I was diagnosed. I'm still in the like triage room in the ER, And he goes, I bet today's a bad day. Like, he's like, I know, I'm going to get you. It's impossible not to have bad days. And I was like, well, didn't find out till 10 at night. So, most of the day was pretty good.
Were you already on your no bad days?
Yeah, since I was 17.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
All right, so take us back. So
Yeah.
before all this cancer and real estate, who was Jeff Holst?
Well, I was 17 apparently.
You were 17 at one point?
Yeah, at one point.
That's pretty shocking, actually.
Yeah.
I don't see you. I see you as a
time
perpetually. How old are you right now?
But 46.
I see you perpetually 46. I've always known you.
I hope so, because if I never age another day from this point without dying, I'll be in really good shape.
It'd be impressive.
Real happy, actually. No, yeah. So when I was 17, I had the teenage angst going on. Like I broke up with my girlfriend, who I thought was going to be my life partner, and my parents had gone through divorce recently, and I don't know, man. I walked into a bathroom with a knife and held it against my wrist, and it was a Miracle Blade 2000, like you remember the Ginsu knives?
Yeah.
Like, it was like a knockoff infomercial knife. That's how awesome this knife was, right? And it had a serrated blade, and I honestly think the serrated blade might have saved my life.
Really?
Yeah, because it hurt.
Yeah.
If it had been a straight unserrated blade, maybe I would have felt differently. But I put it on my wrist, and I thought, this is kind of dumb. Like, why would I want to create more pain in my life? And I know something snapped. I looked in the mirror. I threw the knife in the trash, and then took it out and put it in the sink because, it's my mom's knife. But I did throw it in the trash first. And then I literally just went like, you know what? You're young, healthy, you live in America. Like, your life can't be that bad. Like, let's see if we can figure this out. And so I just said, today's a good day, like out loud, like 10 times to the mirror, and thought that's going to solve my problems. And this is like in the 90s, right? It's pre affirmations existed, but I didn't know about them. Like, YouTube didn't exist yet, so I had no idea who Tony Robbins was.
There's like dinosaurs walking the earth.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Different time, yeah.
It was nearly 30 years ago now, right? So
couldn't watch Tony
so
Robbins.
it didn't work, by the way. Like, I didn't like instantly not have bad days that day, but I'm really stubborn, so I just kept saying that over and over again. Every time I get in the car and look in the mirror, and I would think, like, I'd start the car. It's weird because we have buttons now, but I'd like turn the key, and if it turned on, I'd be like, see, today's a good day. If it didn't turn on, I'd be like, well, at least mechanics exist, I just kept doing that. And after about a month of saying to myself, today's a good day every day, I walked into a 7-Eleven, and the guy behind the counter goes, how you doing today? And I go, I never have bad days. And then I went, holy crap, I probably said something worse than that, but I literally was like, whoa, I never have bad days. And then I realized it'd been like a month or two since I had a bad day. And I thought, there's something here. And I just kept doing it.
Is that how when people say, how you doing? Is that generally your response?
Yeah. I never have bad days. I love that because when I walk into and it's almost always like a convenience store, gas station type situation, cafe or whatever. And you say that, and there's only about 3 responses you get. One person will say like, I wish I could do that. And I love that response because then I can tell them, you can. Like, I wrote a book about it. But
buy my book.
Just buy my
today,
book.
Right?
Well, I think it's even cheaper than that.
I got 4 in my backpack. Here,
I do actually give away way more books than I sell. It's kind of, But anyway, so like if they say that, that's cool. But a lot of people will be like, I don't believe you, like it's not possible. And that makes me sad, but what can you do, right? People are receptive to your message or they're not. And I figure if I just keep doing it long enough, it influences people. I have a friend who's, I've been friends with him since like when I was in undergrad. So, 25 years now, and he didn't get it forever. And like 5 years ago, he called me up one day and he goes, I think I finally get it. And now he doesn't have bad days anymore, like at all. Right. And it's been like 5 years, and it took him a long time to like wrap his head around it. And it really comes down to like a pretty simple recognition. And that is, somewhere in the world right now, someone's having like the worst day of their life. Somewhere else in the world, someone's having the best day. So the day it objectively is neither good nor bad. It's just how those individuals perceive it. And Hal Elrod had this quote, right? He said something like, the Miracle Morning guy, he said, the moment that you take full responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you can change anything in your life. If you take that like sort of radical responsibility for your life and you apply it to the fact that like your perspective is the only thing that determines if you have a good or bad day, then turns out just being delusional and saying today's a good day is actually all it takes. And then people will say, well, that, like my brother, right? He'll say, well, it can't possibly be a good day because you just got diagnosed with leukemia. Objectively, that wasn't my favorite thing to have happen to me. But the reality is, if that hadn't happened to me, I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now. I would be a bankruptcy attorney in West Michigan. I probably would have a television commercial. I'd be like the Better Call Saul of West Michigan. I'd be successful and happy, but I wouldn't have had this extraordinary life that I've had. Because when I got sick and it forced me into personal bankruptcy, I reevaluated my life and went, I want time freedom. I don't know how long I'm going to be alive. And that's why I started investing in real estate. So
when did you get leukemia?
When I was 30.
When you were 30?
Yeah. So like 13 years after I started the no bad days thing. And
how'd you know, like, what was the symptoms that took you to the doctor to say, hey, something's wrong here?
Well, I had a short bucket list and that I came up with when I was 20 or something like that. And it was like, go to the pyramids, go to Machu Picchu, just like these old things. I wanted to see old stuff. And I went to Machu Picchu, and there's a little bit of elevation there. Like Cusco's like 10,000 feet, and I wasn't recovering as well as I thought, and I ended up getting a little cold, and so I spent some time in the rainforest at that point too, and so I went to the ER, and I was like, I think I've got like pneumonia or something, and they did standard ER stuff, gave me some antibiotics and sent me home, and it didn't get better. So I went to the ER again like a couple days later, and they were like, well, maybe you picked up a parasite in the rainforest. Let's check some stuff out. So they did the like basic blood work panel, a CBC, and my white blood cell count was like, I think it was elevated to 258,000. It's supposed to be like 4,000. So I was like, well, that can't be good. And that's pretty much the classic leukemia. Actually, most people catch it a lot sooner than that. So I was in a pretty bad spot at that point.
Dang. So what do they do? I want to get to your real estate and all that, but what do they do? What's the treatment like? Was it chemo? What would you go through? Yeah.
So, I mean, technically I still have leukemia. Okay. People get that wrong all the time, but the type of leukemia I have, there's so many different types of leukemia. So, but the type of leukemia that I have is called chronic myeloid leukemia. Mm-hmm. And it used to be like a virtual death sentence. I had like a 5-year survival rate that was single digits. Back in 2006. I was diagnosed in 2008, so that's actually good timing. Now the 5-year survival rate's like 99% or something. Yeah, they came out with this drug that's it literally came out in 2007, like right before I was diagnosed. So they didn't even know how effective it was when I started taking it. But yeah, it's a 1-a-day oral chemotherapy, and I've been on it since 2008. And it pretty much controls it. It's a protein inhibitor, so it doesn't even is super targeted chemotherapy, so it doesn't have a lot of the side effects. I mean, I will get a little if I don't eat food with it, I might feel nauseous or something. But other than that, it's pretty good.
Wild. Isn't that crazy to think sometimes like had this happened to you 10 years earlier? Like,
yeah, I'd be dead.
Like we're at such a like I have a lot, like people who they're like my wife hasn't gone through this, but I hear the story constantly. It's like, oh yeah, if this was the old days, my wife wouldn't have made it through labor. Like it was so common to lose your spouse in labor because the baby's breached or whatever.
Childhood mortality has gone almost zero, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's
but
insane.
For sure, yeah. Like the birthing process is, it's a risky thing, but we're really good at it now.
Yeah.
And things like CML, like I have, probably killed people for millions of years, and then all of a sudden, bam! Now it doesn't kill people anymore. I mean, obviously, some people still die from it.
And so what a great day, knowing that we live in a day where you have medicine, you take one pill, and at no other point in history would you've survived.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a blessing.
There were like, some people that survived it, obviously, so it's theoretically possible. And I would have tried because I'm a fighter.
You're a fighter, man.
Yeah.
Fighter. You can see it in your eyes.
I would have kept up the battle. I would have been brave.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
All right, so you get leukemia. You're like, I gotta get some passive income. But before that, you were an attorney.
Yeah.
And that was a great career.
Yeah, I mean, it was all right.
Okay.
Yeah, listen, so it was 2008, and I was a bankruptcy attorney, so we're doing all right.
Yeah, okay.
There was a lot of bankruptcies back then during the Great Recession, and I filed 400 bankruptcies in 2 years.
Jeez, yeah.
And we felt like we were helping people. I started out doing like criminal law and some other stuff, but that stuff is depressing. Like people fighting over their children that's tough to deal with. So I got out of family law really fast, and then I had a couple of criminal cases where my clients were just not good people.
Yeah.
You know, it's shocking, right? Like
Yeah,
criminals,
amazing.
not good people. And I didn't want to deal with them anymore. But with bankruptcy, especially then, you know, there was a wave of, you know, I was doing a lot of truck driver bankruptcies and a lot of GM employee bankruptcies because there was a GM plant really close to my office that closed down. And those guys, like, they never had any chance. Like I mean, sure, they could have gotten into real estate or something else. But if you're a factory worker making $40,000 a year in the early 2000s, you were doing pretty well. And but you weren't getting super far ahead, right? You had a 401k, but you couldn't really tap that right then. And like, you probably had a mortgage payment and 2 car payments.
Yeah.
I never thought about it before. Like bankruptcy attorney, I mean, I'm really glad you brought this up. I've always kind of, I don't say look down, but maybe like subconsciously, if I hear bankruptcy attorney, I just think, oh, you know, like another attorney. But you're right. Like they're literally helping people out of a really bad situation and turning their life around.
Yeah. And that's what I liked about it, right?
That's
so like,
cool.
I looked at it like that. Like, no one likes their divorce attorney. No one likes their criminal attorney unless they're guilty and got off from a crime. But then they think their criminal attorney is great. Like, oh, I got away with murder, you know, like, but no one likes those people.
Yeah.
But if you really want to be honest, when you have a bankruptcy attorney, and I know this from experience having gone through bankruptcy. So I probably should be practicing bankruptcy law now, right? Because you can be really empathetic. But what happens is you've got bill collectors calling you constantly.
Yep.
You're not able to pay your bills. You're under constant pressure. You're terrified. And for like 99% of people, by the time they actually walk into the office of a bankruptcy attorney, they're done. They think they have no other choice.
Yep.
And they're probably right. And then the bankruptcy attorney can look them in the eye and say, you know what? I can fix all this for you. And like next week, the bill collectors will stop calling you. Like literally that fast, right? Like once it's filed, instantly within 48 hours, all the debt collection efforts stop. In fact, that's required by law. There's a thing called the automatic stay that stays all debt collection during the pendency of the case. So even before it's resolved, they can't be bothering you and harassing you. And you go from like feeling horrible and miserable all the time to like being like, whoa, I actually have a chance.
Yeah, you can breathe.
Yeah. Like, and it's called a fresh start for a reason. I mean, I think it's necessary. Like the other alternative is like debtors prisons and stuff like that. I'm not pro that.
I know.
So.
I've been thinking about like, again, to go back to like, we live in such a blessed time where like at all other points in human history, if you were in debt, it was just like, well, you're going to go to jail or get killed.
Yeah.
Like, and now it's like, we have such a cool system. And like, yes, people take advantage of it, I'm sure.
So
but
yeah, there are people.
How great is that we can be like, hey, you know what? I had a hard time. I'm just going to like, but worst case scenario, I tell myself that sometimes is like if I'm stressed about real estate or work or business, I'm like, worst case scenario, I go bankrupt.
Yeah.
And nothing, my kids still love me. My wife still loves me.
I'm still happy.
I still get to go on vacation. And go to the beach.
Like you can't buy something new. You can't buy a new car for 7 years or something like that.
But you can't finance something for a few years.
Look, it's not even that bad, right? Like I filed bankruptcy in 2010. I bought my first real estate investment in 2011. Like I retired from my corporate job in 2016. So bankruptcy to literally never have to work again the rest of my life in 6 years.
Explain what bankruptcy is. I mean, or what did you file personal bankruptcy?
Yeah. Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Yeah.
What led to that?
Well, I had a ton of debt. Right? It wasn't medical debt, actually. It was, I worked at, I had the law firm. So I started my own law firm. And this is going to sound stupid now because it's so dated, but we had the back page of the telephone book, like the expensive, those ads back then were literally $7,000 or $8,000 a month just for every month. So it was $100,000, $80,000 a year. And I was on 2 phone books. So I had that overhead. And then I had, office staff and office rent and, utilities and all that stuff. It all came up when you added it all up. It was about $4,500 a week to break even.
Wow.
Right. Which was totally fine when I was filing 400 bankruptcies a year and getting paid $1,500, make about $800-900 per bankruptcy. So look, if you want to math it out, it was pretty good, right? $300,000-400,000 coming in, $150,000-200,000 going out in expenses, and the rest was mine. So it was good. I mean, we were doing really well. But then I got sick and I couldn't file new bankruptcies, and I had $4,500 a month and a week and drain, and I had really good credit. So I thought, well, I'll pay the phone book ads on my credit card. And like, I just kept doing that. And I tried to stay ahead. In fact, the day I filed bankruptcy, I was current on everything. I never had the debt collector thing. My mortgage was paid 2 weeks before I filed bankruptcy. Like every single thing was paid.
Did you just file because you knew it was coming, or what?
Yeah, I had hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt at that point. And I was looking at the reality of where I was, and maybe it's possible I could have pulled out of it, but I didn't see a solution to it at the time. And I closed my law firm down, got nothing out of that, took a job in Tennessee. That's how I moved to Chattanooga. I was in Michigan before that. And I made $600 a week.
What were you doing?
Yeah. Transportation, hiring truck drivers.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to do something completely different.
Yeah,
You
just like reset your life, and that's cool.
Yeah, right. I was just like, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm getting rid of all this debt. I'm going to do something completely different. I need to clear my head, figure out how to get into real estate. That was really the reason I did it.
Yeah, where did the idea of real estate come from? Had you always wanted that?
Yeah, I was a weird kid, man. I would wake up at like 3 a.m. and sneak downstairs and watch like late night infomercials, like Carlton Sheets, No Money Down stuff. Yeah, it's also how I ended up with the Miracle Blade, because it turns out they have those infomercials in the middle of the night too.
Yeah.
All right, so you decide I'm gonna get into real estate. What was your very first deal? How'd you get into it?
Yeah, it was a $30,000 condo, bank owned foreclosure. The mortgage that they had foreclosed on was like $100,000. It was Detroit, so the market had just 2011. You guys were on bashing Detroit all the time, talking about how terrible Detroit was, and I'm like, I want to buy Detroit. That sounds like the best market. But really, it came down to I knew the market better, and I had a friend who had a property management company there, and he was like, "Hey, you want to split this deal with me?" And so we just paid for cash for it. I didn't have any credit, right? I just gone through bankruptcy. I still had a negative net worth. I had $100,000 in student loans from law school and my MBA.
Oh yeah, because student loans
those don't go away in bankruptcy.
Which I think is silly. I don't know why that.
They're subsidized by the government, so they're really low interest rates. So it's kind of a trade-off, right? Like it makes it more affordable for people to go to school. But they're guaranteed by the government. So the government's like, we're not going to let you get out of them. Plus, like, if you think about it, it's like, if you look at a secured debt, if you bought a house and you file bankruptcy, if you want to keep the house, you keep the debt, right? Well, if you got a law degree and you file bankruptcy, you're going to keep your law degree. It's not like your law degree goes away. So if you look at it like from a secured debt perspective, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But I would be totally fine with them getting rid of student loan debt in bankruptcy. The reason they changed it used to be that way. They changed it because you'd have these like doctors that would qualify for bankruptcy, like because they're in residency, and they would make like $300 a week for their first year of being a resident, and then they would file bankruptcy, and then like a week later they would start making $250,000 a year and not have any debt.
Yeah, I guess there's no clear solution
so it's
there,
like,
but
you got to figure out a way to like say, hey, can you afford it or not? And there is technically a mechanism where you can say like, hey, there's no realistic way I'm ever going to pay it off, and then you can go through a process to get it discharged. Like if you become disabled or something like that. But I don't mind. I'm still paying my student loans. The interest rate's really low, so my payment's $450 a month, and I've been paying it for 12 years or 15 years since I got out of bankruptcy.
Yeah, wild. Yeah, I know so many people. Like a good buddy of mine, actually, like him and his wife. I think they have $200,000 in student loan debt, and they're like 30 right now, and they got out of college probably 7 years ago.
Yeah,
but like.
It's another mortgage payment.
It's a mortgage payment, yeah, and then some. And they don't actually. It's like when you're 20 years old or 19, you don't really.
Yeah,
you don't need to counselor like, oh yeah, just sign up for this and just get the student loan sign here. They just don't have the.
I totally think that they should not. I'm not like super into like giving people free stuff, but like I understand the argument for like free college or free giving.
I would love America to shift to a free college.
I really do understand the argument for that. When you're 18, 19, you don't have the capacity to understand what you're signing. Like, honestly, like I had a full ride scholarship to law school, and I still took student loans, and I used it to travel Europe, right? Like I was like, oh, like it's free money. Like, so I actually am okay with the fact that I have to pay it back, because I'm like, I kind of should pay that back. I spent that money. The business debt that I processed that a long time ago. It did feel like failing a lot. You're like, whoa, like I'm bankrupt. That sucks. But yeah. But to get back to your question, we paid cash for that deal, and it was awesome.
It's awesome. Tell us about that first deal.
Yeah. So like I said, it was a $30,000 condo. It rented for $600 a month right out of the gate. Didn't need any renovation or anything. And we just I had literally saved up $20,000. And we each put $17,500 into this company we created, 123 Main Street, named after the condo or whatever, and put the 17.5 in there. Paid $30,000 for the condo in cash. Had $5,000 left over, and that was the whole plan. And we rented out for $600 a month. And about 2 months later, another condo in the same building came up for sale. Same bank, another foreclosure. They called us and asked us if we wanted to buy it, and I don't have any money left. But my buddy had just flipped a house, so he had the money, so he loaned us the money. Like, he loaned our company the money, and honestly, it was like 123 Main Street, number 5 and number 10. So like, he was like, it's just easier if we put it in the same LLC. So he loaned the money to the LLC, and we bought it, and then we used the cash flow to pay down that debt. And we just had these 2 free and clear condos, and we still own them both now. Like. And they're probably worth $200,000 a piece or something. Now we paid 30 for them, and yeah, they rent for $1,500 a month. So yeah,
amazing. Wild.
Yeah,
right.
first out deals I ever did, I still own them. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
So what came next? I mean, where'd your career go, real estate wise? How'd you get out of your job eventually?
Yeah, so the next thing I did is realize I loved real estate, and I wanted to keep buying real estate, but we didn't have any money and we didn't have any credit. So we found this duplex not too far from the condos. It was $75,000, and we didn't have the money. Neither of us did, because my buddy had just loaned the money to the company for the second condo. But we had free and clear condos, so we went to a third party and we said, hey, we found this deal. It's great. And we have these free and clear condos that we think are worth about $50,000 each. We just made that number up, right? We just bought them for 30 months ago. But I mean, honestly, we got a good deal. So we felt comfortable with that number. So why don't you give us a $25,000 mortgage on each one, and then put 25 of your own money in, and we'll go create a new company, and we'll each put 25,000 in it, and we'll buy this duplex for cash. So that's what we did. So we started a second company. It was owned 2/3 by our company and 1/3 by this other investor's company, and effectively got into the duplex with leveraging the condos that we had. And it worked pretty well. And so we just kept doing that. That guy had a lot of money. He was making a lot of money at the time. And so we just said, hey, we found this other deal. Why don't you loan money to the company we all own together, and we'll go buy that deal. And we just kept doing that over and over. And over 3 or 4 years, he loaned us about $1 million.
Wow.
And this is bottom of the market. So we're buying $8,000 houses in Detroit, for cash, put $10,000 in them. And we would sell a few to a foreign investor that wanted an 8% cap rate or something. And then we'd take some of that money and buy a little bit nicer property. And we just repeated that. And then, like I said, in 2016, I quit my corporate job mostly because it was selling to a big publicly traded company, and I didn't want to work in their legal department. And so I helped them sell out. They gave me a $200,000 severance package, and I thought, I'm going to take 6 months off. And I never went back to work. And I had 56 units at that point, all free and clear. So, yeah, and it was literally just repeat the same process over and over again.
And have you continued buying, or have you just kind of rode off in the sunset and travel? I know you've traveled a lot.
Yeah, I thought I would do that, right? Yeah. So I the first week, and my ex-wife was working a job at the time, so we had some stability. I mean, she had a good benefits and stuff, but it wasn't a huge amount of money. And she said to me, well, as long as we have the same amount of money next year as we have right now in our bank account, then I don't care if you have a job or not. You can do whatever you want. Just make sure you're not we're not bleeding money. And I said, okay, well, we'll figure it out. So I did a BRRRR, because I was listening to BP at the time, and I was like, oh, BRRRR, that sounds cool. So I bought this duplex for $58,000, put 20 in it, refinanced it, got $85,000 out. And I did that with my dad, actually. And I thought, this is really slow. I got to figure out a way to do better. It was fine. That thing was a 90% cash on cash return or something stupid that after the BRRRR, because it wasn't a full BRRRR. It was we had 87,000 in it, we had got 85 out or something like that, leave just a tiny sliver left in there.
What a failure.
It was a total failure. Yeah, I know. But anyway, yeah. So then I thought I need to do something different. And at the time I was reading Brian Murray's book, Crushing It in Apartments and Multifamily or commercial or something. Yeah, whatever. So I was reading his book. And I thought I should do apartment buildings. That sounds cool. So I found a 12-unit building, and we used the $85,000 that we had just gotten out on the BRRRR as the down payment on it. And we paid like $600,000 for it. So we put a little bit more money in it. So I ended up owning a third of it. My dad had 2/3 because he had to subsidize it because I didn't have enough cash to do it at the time. And we owned that for a couple of years, sold it for $1.2 million. So we did pretty good on it. 1031 that into a retail shopping center that we still own. So
I want to talk about the retail shopping in just a moment. But first, let's get to today's show sponsor. So one thing we do on the show is we give 100% of the profits from the show toward a charity of the guest's choosing. So where are we sending the money from this episode?
I really should remember their official name, but it's called Partnership. It's a Chattanooga charity.
Okay.
And they do shelters for abused women.
Okay.
Yeah, in Chattanooga. They also do some other stuff too. They have a program where they do try to think of what they do. They do this program where they help like where kids are in dysfunctional families and they need like for example, you go through a divorce and one of the parents is really just an abusive parent or whatever, but they get like court mandated visitation, but it's supervised.
Yeah.
These people provide that supervision for them, stuff like that. So yeah, I'm really happy with them.
Why is that important to you?
Well, I think that comes back to my family law days, right? Like I remember one of the worst cases I had ever was this lady whose husband made a lot more money than her. And she had 3 children and he had really good lawyers. She didn't have any money. She barely paid me anything, actually. Like I ended up losing money on the case. And it was just horrible, right? Like she was scared of her now ex-husband, and he was trying to get full custody, making her out to be a terrible person. So that was really disturbing. But I also had another case at the same time where the wife was I was representing the husband, and the wife was really, she was a terrible person. Like there's no other way. We had recordings of her saying horrible, terrible things to her children and stuff like that. And when I went through that, I went like, man, people, they can't live like this. Like we need to figure out a way to solve that as a society. So I've always thought about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. With that said, let's hear from the sponsor.
All right, so I look down at my phone and I see this text. You need to call me. Your house is on fire. And I sat there and I'm looking at the screen and I'm wondering, is this some kind of a joke? The guy who sent it was a tenant I had been trying to evict for months and he hadn't paid in forever. He had trashed the house. I mean, it was disgusting. And the guy himself was, pretty darn unstable. Now, of course, I call him after that text and it goes to voicemail. Great. Now, a few minutes later, I get a call from the fire department. Yep, my first ever rental house was burning down. So how did I get myself in that situation? Well, I didn't screen that tenant. I put in someone I thought would be good, and he was until he wasn't. Now, this is over a decade ago, and since then, I've learned how to properly vet a tenant. And that's through Turbo Tenant, which makes screening for both background and credit really, really easy. But it gets even better. Turbo Tenant also helps you market your rentals to like dozens of the largest sites, including apartments.com and Redfin. You can create custom leases that cover all your rental laws. And you can even use Turbo Tenant for your automatic rent payments. All of this for less than the cost of your Netflix subscription. Yeah, I know, crazy. Save time, save money, and save your sanity by using Turbo Tenant. And because you're so darn cute, you can use the code Brandon10 to save 10%. So check it out at turbotenant.com/betterlife. Hey, so many of you have heard me tell that story about how I bought my daughter Rosie a fourplex, like a rental property, the week she was born, and how we put it on an 18-year, mortgage payoff plan so it'll be paid off when she graduates from high school. So essentially, my tenants are paying for Rosie's entire college. Now that's pretty awesome, right? Not to mention, it's also making almost like $1,000 a month in cash flow. That's double awesome. But I don't think I've ever shared really exactly how I found that deal. So here goes. I found it through direct mail marketing. And here's how. I simply built a high-quality lead list of a lot of names and addresses of potential sellers, and I sent out a whole bunch of mail to every person on that list. And then I talked on the phone to a ton of people, and then I finally got one person that was interested enough to sell me the property, and I got a deal at a great price. So building that giant lead engine like that, it works, but it takes a ton of time, knowledge, and effort, which can really slow down an investor's growth, which is why I reached out to my friend Ryan with Ballpoint Marketing. I asked him to sponsor this show because they're the best at doing everything that I just talked about. Like they're literally going to help you build your entire lead engine. You're going to get a one-on-one call where they're going to help you figure out what you want and then build your lead list for you. Their robots are going to handwrite the postcards with a real pen, which is super cool. They're going to send them out and they'll even answer the phone calls for you. Plus, they'll help you track it all inside of a CRM that they create for you. I know, it's crazy, crazy awesome. And it's going to help you land way more deals consistently. And because you're awesome and because you listen to this show, you're going to get a discount when you tell them that I sent you, or just use code Brandon when checking out with them. I love Ballpoint Marketing and officially recommend them to all my friends and masterminds. So if you're ready to kick your deal flow up a notch, getting more quality leads without pulling your hair out, just go to ballpointmarketing.com/betterlife. Or just shoot me a DM on Instagram with the word ballpoint, like one word, ballpoint, and I'll hook you up with them directly.
All right. So I want to talk about a couple things. One, the retail, and I want to talk about the mid-size multifamily kind of niche. Why don't we start with mid-size multi for a minute? That's something that I talk a decent amount about how I like it, but I hate it.
Right.
I love the difficulty of mid-size multi. When I talk in mid-size multi, I'm referring to anything that's like 5 to 50 units, maybe. I don't know. There's no fine line, but it's like big multifamily is obvious by a big apartment complex, and then small multi is very obvious, 1 to 4 units.
Yeah. So, I mean, I own 20 buildings in that size. Like, I mean, 10, 15, 20 units. My biggest multifamily is 56 units.
Okay, yes. You are a
mid-size
multi guy.
That's what I do. My smallest is 10 units. My biggest is 56.
Which the mid-size multifamily is one of the what I call cash flow vehicles. I wrote that little ebook about cash flow vehicles that work in 2024 and beyond. And that's mid-size multi is one of them. But they're incredibly difficult. So why do you like them? Why are they difficult? And why do you buy them?
So, I mean, the difficulty, of course, is with scale, right? Like if you have a 200-unit building, you have an on-site manager. You can do some asset management stuff that makes it easier. You've got KPIs that are clearer. You're typically dealing with more sophisticated lending products. They're easier to get non-recourse loans. So there's a lot of advantages to the big stuff. But the reality is, for me, I think mid-size is actually easier than the other stuff. I think, but again, it's, you always say pick your hard. I got really good at that particular subset. But our strategy has been to buy stuff close together so we get the advantage of scale. So, I have a 42-unit building in North Georgia, and about a mile and a half away, I have a 38-unit building, right? So now I've got 80 units right in that general area. And then a mile from that, I have a 20-unit building. And actually a mile and a half from that's where that 12-unit that I sold was, right? So like that area, like I'm going to keep buying in that area because like I have vendors there. I have contractors there. I've got property management in place there. So that's been my strategy, is to like stay concise. And the property that we have the most trouble with is actually one that's an hour and a half from there. It's a 56 unit. And that one's the hardest one for me, even though it's a bigger property. But that's part of a defined strategy too. We like that market. And so we bought that as like our beachhead property in the market. And the intent is to buy other 20, 30, 40 unit buildings in that same area.
That's smart, man.
I mean, our timing was a little off, let's be honest. Like the market's gotten a little challenging. We bought that like 2 years ago. But it's fine. It's still a really good deal. It's just a lot more, it's been more challenging than we expected. So
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I love that. Like you took your hard, like mid-sized multifamily is hard in that it's hard to scale up. Like you said, the economies of scale aren't there. And you said, well, how am I going to make this my hard? I'm going to buy a bunch of them and I'm going to establish the beachhead. I'm gonna tackle this thing. And now it's no longer hard. It's hard to everybody. It would be hard for me. Like when I bought my 24 unit in Cincinnati, it was hell. Like it was terrible because I didn't know any property managers, no contractors. It wasn't big enough to have on-site management. There's nothing. It was just hard. Had I approached it though, going, I'm going to be a mid-sized multifamily investor in Cincinnati, I would have bought a bunch and I would have scaled up and it would have been fine.
Yeah, and I've done this in 2 markets. So I still have property in Detroit too. And it's the same thing there. Like we have a 19 unit, we have a 32 unit, we have a 40 unit, but they're all right next to each other. They're all within a few miles, the same counties, same contractor, same property management. And that's what we'll do in the new property in Alabama too. Like eventually we'll have, 3 or 4 properties right in the same area, using the same management, same vendors, all that stuff.
How do you pick your markets? Because you said that you just picked that new market where you want to scale at.
Well, I'm not great at this. I picked Detroit because that's where I started investing. Like, so, we already already had the resources there. I picked North Georgia because it's really Chattanooga where I lived at the time. Like these properties, I still have an apartment in Chattanooga. Like I have one in Puerto Rico and I have one in Chattanooga. And my apartment in Chattanooga is 1.5 miles from North Georgia. Like we're right on the border, and the properties that I have are like 10 minutes from me.
Cool.
So,
and then what about the Alabama property?
you know what? It was a broker relationship, and the deal looked really good on paper. It turned out it was a lot harder than we thought it would be. And it's also only 1.5 hours from where we're at in Chattanooga. So we're able to what we've ended up having to do actually is bring a lot of our contractors and move them over there and just pay more money to get this stuff done.
Yeah. What makes it challenging? Why was it more challenging? Like, because people are gonna be listening to this and they're like, "Well, I see a property 1.5 hours away and the numbers look good."
Yeah.
Like, why is it not as good?
Well, so the property management that we use, they're licensed in Alabama. We thought that they could do a good job managing it, but they really didn't have the resources in place, and they're getting there now. But that was part of it. We also the seller. I mean, and we probably should have caught it in due diligence. I don't know, but they misrepresented a lot of stuff. And because we were further away, we didn't have the same institutional, obvious knowledge. I think if I'm in North Georgia and I walk a property, I see it from the eyes of what rents I'm going to collect in North Georgia. And I don't even think about it. I didn't realize how much impact that had. Like, I know for sure what the rents will be. I can go, okay, if I fix this up, this is what I'm going to get in rents because I get that same rent next door.
Yeah.
This property, it seemed like the rents are way lower than North Georgia, and we knew that going in. We knew they were going to be lower. We did rent surveys. We talked to other properties, but I just did not fully appreciate that. The differential, subconsciously, I think so. So that's been part of it. But also we had issues with there was an on-site manager there who we interviewed and ended up retaining, and she ended up being a train wreck, actually. So it was a lot worse than we thought. And that I think that's maybe why they were selling. They were having management issues, and is what it is. But
are you using on-site managers, giving for rent to people in all your properties? Some of them, is there a certain size that makes sense?
No, actually, this is the only one we've had an on-site manager in.
Yeah. When I had the 24 unit, not in Cincinnati, when I had my first 24 unit on Western Washington in Aberdeen, Washington, I had after 2 years of fixing it up, my wife and I were there every day, so we didn't need it. But once it got stabilized, had all 24 units rented out, we would give people free rent for living there, and then they would take care of the property. And that worked out well. In fact, ironically, the song that plays at the beginning of the Better Life podcast, that song is we set our sights on a better life. That one.
Yeah.
That was actually written and performed and played whatever by my resident managers that lived in my apartment complex in Aberdeen. Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, random full circle. So for a year we gave them free rent. They just checked out the property. They were there. And I had another couple, not young couple that I knew from church early on. They came out and lived for a year. And then I like that model. I learned a lot of, have you read John T. Reed's book? So there's a guy named John T. Reed. He is an old school investor. The book came out in the 80s, maybe early 90s, but probably 80s. John T. Reed, I wonder if he's still alive. Website's looks like 1995. And he got this big, thick book, and it was called Managing, I'm gonna get it all wrong, but it's Managing Rentals for Maximum Cash Flow and something else. It's a big, long title, ugly orange looking book cover. But that book was like a manual on managing mid-size rentals. And it was this is exactly how you do it. In fact, when we wrote the book on managing rental properties, I was I just want to write that level of specificity with my wife and I of let's just write the manual. Here's your manual. So anyway, he advocates very strongly for putting in resident managers, which is why we did.
Yeah.
And it worked. It worked well. I did not manage the manager very well, and so any problems were my own fault in reality. But
yeah. So and that's kind of what we've dealt with because we haven't had on-site managers in anything. We haven't had resident managers or anything like that. It's not a process that we've had to really understand before. And I think that's really where the learning curve has been. But I think anytime you do something different, there's a learning curve, right?
Yeah.
And that's what happened there. I mean, I don't regret it because we picked it up really good price and even with cap rate compression or, expansions that have been going on and stuff like that, it's still pretty good. So
yeah. Random story, that book, the John T. Reed's cash flow book, I got it from the library when I was in my 20s. And I read it and I was so in love with that book. It was just so detailed that I went to go buy it and I went online. It wasn't on Amazon. I don't even know if Amazon existed then, but I went to his website and it was like $150 for that book. And I was like, geez, that's a lot of money for the book. And so then I went to the library and I was like, hypothetically, if I lost a library book, what would happen? And they're like, well, you'd have to pay for it. And I was like, well, how much would I have to pay for this one? You know, I told them, I was like, I checked out a book, John T. Reed's, whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be $40. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to pay that. So I just paid it. And I still own the book to this day. Yeah, I stole from the library. I didn't steal because I paid for it. I paid for it.
But you did cheat all those other people that would have read the book out of that. Because you know the library did not replace
No, they did not. So yeah.
They were actually probably happy though, because you're probably the last person to check it out was like in 1983 or something.
So tell me this: when you're looking at a mid-sized multifamily, what are all of the numbers that you are looking at? So for me, I'm a single family investor, and you can pencil out a deal on the back of a napkin pretty easily. Yeah. And so what are things like for somebody that's listening to this? It's like, hey, because you said this at the beginning, where it's like, if I'm just doing one bird at a time, it's going to take a long time to scale. So what are the things that people should be looking for when they're looking at mid-sized multifamilies?
Well, I mean, so I personally think that all real estate's essentially the same. I mean, I think any of it can be penciled on the back of a napkin, really. Like, I don't care if you're buying a gigantic deal or a tiny deal. It's the same thing. It's all about the numbers. Like, what's your return? What's your cost of capital? Like, the whole capital cost, not how much does it cost to borrow money, but like your total capital stack, right? Look at that. What's the cost of that? And then look at what the cap rate is, or what the return that you're going to get on that investment is, and make sure your cost of capital is less than the return you're going to get. I mean, it's really almost that simple. Yeah. I think about cap rates all the time. Like, people are always like, well, like low cap rates are bad, high cap rates are good because I get a better return. And some people think the opposite because, they're like, well, I want more equity, so I want a lower cap rate. But I mean, cap rates, when you really get down to it, are just, they're just a measure of risk. Right? The riskier an investment is, the higher the cap rate. I mean, all investment returns are a function of two things: the risk-free rate of return plus the risk premium. And so the reason cap rates have gone up in the market right now is the risk-free rate of return has gone up, and that's absorbed into the cap rates, and that's pushed up. The risk premiums actually haven't changed that much. If anything, they've come down a little bit.
What do you mean about risk premium? Explain that.
Yeah, so
term.
Go.
Go risk premium.
So risk premium is just the differential between the risk-free rate of return, like the T-bill rate, and what the return on investment is.
Okay.
So the risk-free rate of return plus the risk premium in finance or economics is just classic definition of return on investment. And so what I've always looked for, and this goes to the mid-sized multifamily, what I've always looked for is a place where I can get compensated by a higher risk premium and take less personal risk, because the market risk premium doesn't change based on my personal risk. So like you said, it would be really hard for you to buy a 24 unit in Chattanooga. Would not be hard for me to do that. But we would be paying the same price. We'd have that same risk premium, but for me, I'm taking less risk. And so I have like an asymmetrical return on my investments compared to like you would in that market.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point.
So I always look at that. So I always say, wait, what's the total return? What's my cost of capital? Do I like that? And then do I have access to the adequate capital to do it? And then if it's like, if I'm going to raise money for a deal, I have to understand what I'm going to be able to offer my investors, and then look at it and say, is there still enough left for me? Because if there's not enough left for me, I can't do the deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you explain real quick? And I say this because when I was like 6-7 months into real estate investments, only like 3.5 years ago, I had a conversation. Somebody was throwing around the term cap rate, and I nodded my head and smiled and acted like I knew what it meant. Yeah. So can you explain what cap rate means?
Yeah. So this is like, to me, like the most important concept almost in real estate, right? Especially when you get to like commercial real estate, because the 1 to 4 units, they're valued differently. But capitalization rate is what cap rate is short for, and capitalization rate is literally your return on capital. So if you bought a property for cash, say it was $100,000 and it was an 8 cap property, it would make $8,000 a year. After all expenses.
Yeah, if you pay cash.
Yes, if you pay cash after all expenses.
Because we ignore the mortgage because if we included the mortgage in it, it would just throw all the numbers wildly out. Because you put 50% down, I could put 100% down. Now my deal
Well, and
was
you
way
might
better.
get better terms than me, or
Yeah.
I might get
Yeah.
better terms than you. So like,
Yep.
it's just
We
like,
ignore
it's
the
just,
mortgage.
if you ignore the mortgage completely, you paid cash for a property, what is the return you would get? And by the way, this is why the risk premium we were just talking about really matters. Cause like the risk-free rate of return, the treasury rate is like, 4 or 5% now. It used to be like 0%. So the differential is, in that imaginary 8 cap property would be like, say, 4% if the risk-free rate of return was 4%. So that differential is really the measure of risk.
Mm-hmm.
And the cap rate itself is a measure of risk effectively because everyone has the same risk-free rate of return, because that's set by like how much does it cost to get capital and what do you get paid in your bank account essentially.
Mhm.
So you're saying risk-free rate of return right now is let's call it 4%.
Yeah.
I can get an 8% return or an 8%. Let's say I probably an 8 cap. There's a 4% difference here. That's the
risk
That's
premium.
the risk premium because I'm.
That's why you're getting paid for taking the risk.
Yes.
That's why it's a risk premium. It's just like an insurance thing. It's
Well,
like same concept.
You mentioned it real quick, but I want to emphasize it for a minute here because it's so important. As you said, if I were to buy a property in the market in Chattanooga, my risk is higher, even though we're buying the exact same property, because you understand the market, which is one thing I teach all the time for years in a couple of my books, but I call it the crystal clear criteria. You could call it a buy box, but it's like, what is your location? What is your strategy? What is your niche? What is your property type? What's the condition you buy in? When you can master the 6 pieces of the crystal clear criteria and say like, no, I know that this is mine, you drastically reduce the risk. Which is why when I got into Open Door Capital, we only did mobile home parks for 3 years, nothing else. Because I said, we have to become the world's greatest mobile home park company if this is going to work, because that reduces our risk.
Yeah.
That reduces the risk from investors. If you want, so my encouragement to people listening to this is like, what is your strategy, niche, property type, location, all that, like crystal clear criteria, nail it. And then the better you are at that, the lower your risk is. And that's when you really succeed at real estate in a hard market.
I call it asymmetric risk return, right? Like, cause I'm getting paid the market risk premium, taking less risk. And I mean, my classic example, this is something I've mentioned before on many times actually, is I don't buy duplexes anymore. I buy mid-size multis. I have a couple duplexes, but I don't go buy them regularly. But there's a street in Chattanooga that if a duplex comes up on, I always look at it. I always decide if I want to buy it. I've owned about 15 duplexes in Chattanooga. Probably 12 of them were on the same street, and I know that street really, really well. And I know what the rents are. I probably know who the tenants are going to be right at this point. Like I used to personally manage them. That burr that I did, that was on that street. That first duplex I bought after I got out of work. Right. And that to me is the classic example of like, get really good at a specific thing and you're going to get paid the same risk premium that anyone else does, and you take less risk.
Yeah, that's
End of
beautiful,
story.
man. I love that way of thinking. All right, let's unless you have something else on that, I would love to talk a little bit about the retail center, the shopping center, or whatever. What is that? Have you gotten more into that? What are the pros, cons? Like, what's that like?
Well, I mean, I like my shopping center. It's really stable, triple net rents. You don't have to think about it. I mean, I actually manage it myself. It's really easy. I might spend, 15 minutes a month thinking about it. Like it's literally that easy. The mortgage is on auto pay. The tenant's auto deposit. Once in a while, I'll get an email saying, hey, I've got a roof leak or something, because I have a couple of things that I have to do, but most of the stuff is on the tenants.
How many total spaces?
It's about 30,000 square foot, and we have 6 units now because one tenant just combined 2 of them.
Okay.
Yeah, and what I like about it is it's a retail shopping center, but it's not like, a mall. It's not getting Amazonified or whatever. Like it's not going away. Like there's a karate studio in it. Like you're not going to Amazon for karate lessons, right? At least not anytime soon. There's a church in there. There's a few retail stores that could theoretically be a problem, right? But they're really niche stuff, like 1,000 square feet game store, right? Selling like, Settlers of Catan and stuff like that. So
I like that niche a lot, and I like what you mentioned. Like, I don't pursue it right now, but if I were to buy the retail, I want to find businesses that are not going to be killed by Amazon. I think that's so important.
And I do the same thing with office. So I own 3 office buildings too, and one of them's like my own office, right? And we have like small units in the office, so it's almost co-working space, but we rent them out individually, so they're like 200, 300 unit, square foot rent for $500-$600 a month units, shared utilities and common area spaces and stuff. So we've had that for several years, and it's been really, really good. We stay full constantly. But I think I don't want high-rise office in a downtown area, but law firms still want to have a place for their clients to come see them, even post-COVID. It's not going away. So, we have an office building in Chattanooga that has a CPA in it. It's got a lawyer in it. It's got a real estate office in it. These kind of things. And those are really great. And what I like about those is the market got crushed so hard during COVID. Everyone was like, oh, these are going to they're never going to recover. And I was like, these cash flow really well. Let's just buy them for the cash flow and not worry about it. I don't care what it's worth. And actually, one of them we bought for $1.2 million, and I think we're going to sell it because it's worth $2.1 million now, and it's been a year and a half. I mean,
Wow.
$900,000 in gain, and we did a really small syndication on it. I think we raised $500,000. So our investors look like we sell that now, they're going to almost double their money in 2 years. And at a time when no one's making money, we talk about this off camera, but most people are not doing well in syndications right now. They're just not. And if you bought stuff that other people are running away from, it's no different than buying in Detroit when everyone's bashing Detroit. I just looked at that and went, everyone's bashing office. There's probably opportunity.
That's a good point in terms of not listening to the general advice and then making decisions off the general, office is in trouble. Office is in trouble. We all know that.
For sure. I'm not buying high rise.
Exactly.
I'm not going to go buy an office building in New York City or Chicago right now. It's not happening.
And
but maybe. I mean, there might be a good deal there too. I just, my general rule is offices have gotten crushed. And, some of them will get converted to other uses, but they're actually a lot harder to convert than people think. I hear all these people, I'm going to convert them to retail, or I'm going to convert them to residential. That residential conversion is almost impossible with offices.
Yeah, that's what Ken McElroy was just saying.
Yeah, it's just near impossible. And I know tons of people that say they're going to do it, but I'm real skeptical about that.
I think there's an interesting, in the right area, office to self-storage, I think will be powerful. But again, who wants self-storage in a downtown area where you're not living? You go get self-storage.
Downtown self-storage isn't useful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but it goes to the point, if somebody says hey, Airbnb is getting crushed right now, which is true in a lot of markets because it's oversaturated. Airbnb is rough. It's not what it used to be. I'm still printing money off my Airbnbs. It's an amazing investment. Why? Because I have a specific niche that I really understand in an area that I really understand. And so here in Hawaii, they're not building more of them here. So again, taking the general, the rumors of Airbnb doesn't work, and then saying, okay, well, I'm not going to do it then. I love the approach instead of saying, well, how do I make it work? And how do I make it work anyway?
Yeah. Well, actually, this is, this goes to something I think about a lot. And that's even you mentioned earlier, the catamaran thing. This is a perfect example of that. If something doesn't make sense, you have to ask your question is why doesn't it make sense? So if you have a situation like office and people are like, oh, offices are terrible. Well, some people are making money in offices. So then you have to ask well, how are they making money? And I thought this with cap rates. People always say, but I don't want to buy 3% cap rates in Southern California, and maybe they were right because, those cap rates have gone up because of the risk-free rate went up. But that's an appreciation market. It's probably the same here in Hawaii, right? Cap rates are really low because we're in an appreciation market. So the question isn't is that a good deal or not? The market sets these rates for a reason. And so the question is how do I ask the right questions to find the answer of how to make money in that market? It's if you do the work, you can figure it out. And that's what we did with the catamarans. We're well, why can't we? Because the short version is I have a friend who has a charter sailboat company, and he wanted to buy a sailboat and he could not find one. It was impossible to buy. Literally they do not exist. And we're why are no one making these boats? And then we start asking these questions over and over again. And when you get down to it, you figure out, okay, well, there's some laws that make it a lot easier to make these internationally, but the international ones aren't allowed to be used in the same way in the US. And the market's good, but it's not big enough to support the giant manufacturers of boats. There's maybe a market for 500 of these boats a year. Well, if you're making, you're already making oil tankers or something, you're not going to pivot to make, a $2 million sailboat. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a market for it. So then you just keep asking the questions. You keep identifying the opportunity.
Yeah. Tell us about the catamaran business.
Well, I mean, we're really early in it,
Yeah.
so we're working on it now. So the super short version is there's this thing called the Jones Act, and the Jones Act is designed to protect ship makers in the United States, and it actually makes sense, right? If we go to a world war, we don't want to be dependent on like any other country. It doesn't matter how close of an ally they are of ours now to build ships. We need to have like the ability to like build our own ships here, oil tankers, naval vessels, ferries, troop transports, all that stuff. It's important to have that capacity. So the Jones Act started, 100 years ago or so, sometime in the 1930s, so not quite 100 years ago, but a long time ago, they decided we're going to make boats here. I think it's fair. It applies to all commercial boats, though.
Yeah.
So this means like if you want to rent out, swan-shaped paddle boats on like a pond in your backyard, they got to be made in America.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
like it's got to be made in America, and that's not that big a deal because like no one's really doing that. But like to the extent that they are,
I want
they're
one.
made in the United States, right? Or they're violating the law. That's a possibility too, because I don't think anyone's checking the regulations on that too much. But here in Maui, right, you've got giant catamarans, sailing vessels, right, that are taking people out to go on snorkeling trips and things like that, sunset sails. Those things are amazing. But those boats are very, very expensive to get right now and impossible to get if they want to replace them. They're custom made. That's why you see they're all different. Some have glass bottoms, some are a little bit wider. There's no standard boat that's made, and the lag time is 4 or 5 years, and they're $4 or $5 million. So what we thought we would do, because we want to buy these boats, right? But we don't want to wait 4 or 5 years. In fact, our literal argument was, as a joke over a drink, I bet we could build a factory and build our own boats faster than ordering one, right? Because of the lag time on this.
We're having the same conversation about mobile homes with mobile home parks. We're we're seriously and legitimately looking into building just a factory to build our own, because we're buying hundreds a year anyway. It's like, well, why don't we just make our own?
Well, and that's literally what happened. We were like, well, we should be able to build them faster and cheaper than like we can buy them. And so that's how we started, and we just kept digging into that. Was about 2 years ago. And then we started having conversations. I spent a lot of time in Puerto Rico, and initially that's our target market for the charter boats. And so we started having conversations with the Puerto Rican government. They gave us a bunch of tax incentives, really, really attractive tax incentives to build there. And they gave us a piece of land inside of an industrial port for a ridiculously cheap long-term lease. And so, we're gonna try to raise the money and build a factory to build catamarans in Puerto Rico. And we've got a deal with the Coast Guard. They'll be Jones Act compliant. So as soon as they hit the water, you can use them anywhere in the U.S. So people in South Carolina or in Maui need a boat, they can get one production model, 60-foot, ready to go, set up for charter sales already and already approved by the government. So it shortens the timetable dramatically, not just the development timetable, but also the approval timetable. Because when you get a custom-made boat, it has to be inspected by the Coast Guard, and that process takes a while. But the Coast Guard's agreed that as long as we keep the same hull structure, they'll pre-inspect our boats, and then they just do a like rubber stamp sign off after that. So we'll have Coast Guard certificate of inspections right out of the gate. So
that's cool, man. What I like that illustrates is just the entrepreneur mindset of like, I have a problem, or this is a challenge in my life. So instead of like complaining about it or
just ask the right question.
How do I fix it? I bet other people have this problem. I mean, how many businesses have probably most of them in the world have come about because somebody was like, I'm so frustrated the fact that XYZ, like I have to run in my crappy, business shoes. What if we had shoes that were like made for running, and then somebody made running shoes? It's
yeah.
Brilliant, man. Why Puerto Rico?
Well, I started
in general for yourself.
Yeah. So, I've been going to Puerto Rico off and on for more than 20 years. I love Puerto Rico.
Why? Never been there.
Well, you should come down and visit. You both should actually. But
right now?
Is it better
right
now?
Well, I'm not going until next week, so maybe next week.
Right, let's go to Puerto Rico next week.
Yeah, that's cool.
Logan Paul moved there.
Did he?
So
it's true. He's on the other side of the island of me, so I don't get to hang out with him.
Are you
too much,
in? What's the? Are you in San Juan or what?
I am. Like I'm in the San Juan area. I'm technically in Isla Verde, which is it's Carolina. It's a separate city from San Juan, but the airport for San Juan is in Carolina, so it's like 10 minutes from downtown San Juan or old San Juan, stuff like that. So, so essentially San Juan.
Oh, yeah, you're there for taxes? Is that why you do it?
Well, yeah, so there's a huge tax advantage to living in Puerto Rico, but I technically live in Tennessee. Like most people think I'm there for taxes because I talk about how great the tax advantages are there. And, I've got a YouTube channel about Puerto Rico and I do all this because I love Puerto Rico this much. Like I just really love it. So the weather's great, similar to here, I mean, it's good weather. But we have East Coast time zones. Right.
Yeah, which is 70%
so like
of the US
so
population.
that's super helpful, right? It's technically Atlantic Standard Times because we don't have daylight savings time, but we're always within an hour of New York time.
It's a game changer.
Which
Waking up
is
at
super
4 a.m.
helpful.
Yeah,
and the other thing that's great about Puerto Rico is you've got much like Maui in a way, you have different climate zones, right? You've got desert, you've got tropical rainforest, you've got coral reefs, and I love that. And I also have a gigantic 2-mile white sand beach out my back door, amazing turquoise water, all that stuff. And it's so much more affordable. I pay for my condo, a couple of $1,000s a month to rent it. I mean, and it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo, literally 100 steps from the beach.
Here you're looking at 6,000 for that?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm overpaying, right? Like I'm paying the tourist price and I don't care because I love where I live. I'm 4 minutes from the airport and I'm 10 minutes from Old San Juan and I love Old San Juan. I'm right near the charter sailboat business that my friend has. So I can go out on sailboats whenever I want. It's just an amazing lifestyle.
The other great thing about Puerto Rico too, because I have a friend that just moved down there and it's accessible. Versus here, you're spending 14 hours to get here.
No, I mean, I can leave my apartment in Chattanooga, including going through TSA and everything. Like I can leave my apartment in Chattanooga and be at my apartment in Puerto Rico in less than 6 hours.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's from South Florida, it's a 2-hour flight. From Atlanta, it's 3. From New York, it's 3.5. Right, so there's direct flights from Atlanta, from New York, Philadelphia, Nashville, all those places.
It's a game changer.
It's cool. All right, man. Next segment of the show is the how-to section or the how-to segment where you've prepared something to teach our listeners step by step. So what are we learning today from you?
What do you want to learn? I don't know. No, you know what? I have, and I alluded to this a little bit because, we're talking about the catamarans, but I believe that opportunity exists everywhere. People say things like opportunity knocks, but I think that's wrong. I don't think opportunity knocks. I think it's just sitting there waiting for us to grab the door and open it. And I think that the trick is to figure out how do I find opportunity and then what do I do about it? And I have a 2-step formula. I call it the extraordinary life formula. So it's good for better life too. I'll give you a better life if you follow this formula. And the formula is really, really simple. It's take inspired thought and the bright action and add those two together. So you have to first figure out how to get an inspired thought, like, oh, maybe I should build catamarans. And then what actions do I take? So if you follow my formula, it will open up opportunity everywhere and it will allow you to live an extraordinary life. And I think all of us here live extraordinary lives already, but we can always be improving this. So inspired thought comes from opening yourself up to the world. It comes from, have you ever heard of a thing called the Iago trance? Either of you? Iago trance. So Iago is a character in Hamlet, but
also in Aladdin.
Named after the
bird.
Hamlet.
I didn't know this, but I just know the bird Iago.
Yes, he's the same character pretty much. But anyway, so the Iago trance is like when you wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth, but you go through all the motions, but you don't really pay attention to the steps, right? You don't think, now I'm going to put toothpaste on my toothbrush. Now I'm going to put water on it or whatever, right? But if I were to ask you, did you brush your teeth today? You're going to be like, yes. But you probably don't even really remember it. If you do, it's because, it just happened and it's still morning.
It's like when you drive somewhere and you don't even realize
exact thing.
How you got there.
Drive the same route to work every day, same route home every day. And it's really useful from like a psychological perspective because it eliminates things like decision fatigue. This is why like Zuckerberg always wears the same clothes so he doesn't have to think about it. There's advantages to this, but there's also a huge disadvantage, and that is that we're not paying attention. And so we miss opportunities. And so you have to figure out how to wake yourself up. And I have this formula, or really two questions that I ask myself. And I ask myself this pretty much every day, always at least once a week. And the first question is, when is the last time you did something for the first time?
Ooh.
So think about that. Like, when's the last time you did something for the first time? And for me, this is really easy because, like, I've never went on a helicopter until this week. But,
really?
Yeah, I went on a helicopter like 2 days ago. Thank you for the recommendation, by the way.
That's cool.
I appreciate that. It's amazing. But not always. It's not always. It's really easy to go through months of your life without doing anything new. So if you ask yourself,
and I'm like,
when is the last time you did something for the first time? That's the starting question. And then the second question, and I think this is the most empowering question of them all, is what can I do today for the first time? Like, what can I do right now that I've never done before?
I've never taken off my shirt in a podcast.
I was literally just about to say that. Get naked on a podcast.
That.
Yeah, well, so when you have these questions bumping around in your head, sometimes you do come up with crazy ideas, like get naked on a podcast.
We're surprised we've been naked the whole time for those listening on
Spotify.
on Spotify or Apple.
Welcome
we're
to
naked.
Better Life Naturalist.
Yeah. After dark.
But yeah, so yes, but anyway, so if you ask yourself these questions, it wakes you up. And that's the trick, right? You gotta wake yourself up from the yago trance. So that's the first step. That's how you get inspired thoughts.
Yeah.
What are you going to do today for the first time?
What am I going to do today for the first time?
Or what can you do? I mean, you don't have to do it just because you thought of it, right? Like,
I want to do something now. I'm
your
inspired
mind
right now.
I know.
I'm thinking in my head, and I have not done anything new for a while.
It's time then.
I know.
Yeah, now I'm thinking about that too. I'm like,
well, these questions are really useful, and you should ask yourself them all the time, because this is exactly the same reaction everyone always has. They're like, whoa, why didn't I think of that?
My first thought was meth. But
well, I mean,
I don't know if we want to go down that.
So that actually goes to the second part of the formula, right? It's inspired thought plus the right actions. The right actions, right?
Yeah.
So you have this inspired thought, I want to do math, and then you're then you're like, what's the right action? And the right action is think of a different inspired thought.
Okay.
But no, so like, let's just say, for example, your inspired thought is because you're listening to the Better Life podcast and someone was talking to you and you're like, you know what? I'm a bankruptcy attorney in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I think I want to invest in real estate. That's my inspired thought, right? It's a good example because it's so no one would ever do that, right? but all right, so let's say that's your inspired thought, and then you're like, okay, now what do I do? Now we because we've probably all gone to real estate meetups in our life, have probably seen lots of people that say they want to be real estate investors. They go to meetups for 10 years. They have the inspired thought. They want to be a real estate investor. And so what do? They go and they show up at meetups. They talk to people about real estate. They listen to podcasts. They read books about real estate. They start an LLC, they get business cards, they build a website. But then like 10 years goes by and they're still not a real estate investor, right? They took the wrong action, right? I mean, it's not that difficult to take the right action. If you want to be a real estate investor, buy some real estate.
Yeah,
that's the action.
Actually, there's like 12 actions that a real estate investor actually does.
Right.
There's not like hundreds. There's like 12 things.
Yeah. So
analyze the deal, go to a meetup.
So how do you know what the right action is, right? Like, how do we not fall into that trap? Like, oh, I want to build catamarans, so I'm going to read books about catamarans. Well, cool, that's useful, but it doesn't necessarily get me building catamarans, right? So how do I get to that right action? And how do I even know if this inspired thought is worth it? Because I'm going to have thoughts that I think are inspired, and I'm going to find out they're not that great, right? So how do I get to those things is by asking those what, where, why questions that we were talking about earlier. So you just got to niche it down. Like, why do I want to be a real estate investor? What kind of real estate do I want to invest in? Like, just keep asking questions until you get down to something that's so specific that you can move forward with it.
Yeah.
If you do that, so if you have that inspired thought and then you ask the right questions for a while and you take the time. I mean, I think this is something I tell my coaching students. I don't do a lot of coaching anymore, but I used to tell them that the best thing you can do is take like as much time as possible and do nothing. Like really, like if you can only take one day or 1 hour or 1 week, it doesn't matter. Like go by yourself to a cabin in the woods for 3 days, turn your phone off and bring a notepad, or a laptop that's not connected to the internet.
I've wanted to do that.
And don't have any videos and stuff on it, but like, you need that time to think. Cause that's like when I quit working, I went to my dad's condo in Florida, and I thought, I'm just gonna like live on the beach. I'm gonna go on cruises. It's gonna be great. And that lasted about 3 days, and then I was bored. Because people don't get to where they can afford not to work if they're lazy, and like you get bored really fast, right? So then I was like, well, what do I want to do? So I reread Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I remember I was sitting on this beach chair like thing by the pool, and it's Florida, so everyone at the pool is like, 87 years old or something. And this old couple, oh, you're here on vacation visiting your parents, huh? And I'm like, nah, I retired. They're like, you can't retire. Well, how old are you? I'm like, 39, like I think, or 36 or whatever. I was at 30. He was in my 30s, right? I think I was because I was like 37, right? So I'm 37. They're like, that's impossible. You can't retire at 37. I'm like, I don't know why not, but then I started thinking about it, right? I had this thought, like, well, wait, I really retire? Like, is that really what I'm going to do? Like, what am I going to do next? And I started asking those questions. I listened to a lot of podcasts. I read some books. I thought about it a lot, and I realized that I wanted to help people. I needed to find my purpose. My purpose at that point, I defined it as I want to help other people be able to live financially free. So I thought that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend the rest of my time. That's when I started my podcast. That's when I really started, getting involved in talking about real estate, going on other people's podcasts and stuff. Not because I wanted to be famous. I just wanted to help people. I just thought I want to help people. And I thought everyone should invest in real estate. And I'm not sure that's true now. For a couple of years, I tried to convince everyone I met that they should all be investing in real estate, and they probably should have listened to me because it was 2017, and like you could have pretty much bought anything and been fine. But I realized that not everyone wants to be real estate investors, so I transitioned over the last few years to talking about living the best version of your life, whatever that means to you.
Yeah, and if you have a job you love and you feel secure in it, and you're happy, then great, go all in. But
and actually, I have these conversations a lot. Like I went into a Waffle House, like, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago, and I was talking to this lady who was probably like 60 years old, and I said, and she was really friendly, and we're just chatting. She obviously liked what she was doing, and I was like, I'm just curious, like when you were a little girl, like what did you want to do with your life? Like, I'm just curious about this. Like, and it's probably rude to ask somebody that, like when they're working at a Waffle House, right? Thank God her answer was good, because it could have been negative. She said, when I was a little girl, my dad and I would go to Waffle House. Like that. I mean, it was literally like that bad. I mean, I don't think it was a Waffle House. We went to this cafe. I don't think she said Waffle House. So she said, we went to this cafe, and like, and the people there just seemed so happy and friendly all the time. And I just thought, like, be really cool if I didn't need to worry about anything, and I just have a job where I could be happy and friendly and meet interesting people. And she's like, I love my job. This is literally the job that I want. And she's like, actually, my husband retired from whatever, and like we have a pension, and like he keeps telling me we should like, move, and we should go on vacation more. And I'm like, no, I want to go to work.
That's awesome.
Like she like literally this lady's working at a Waffle House, and I'm thinking this is like a crappy job, right? But then I thought about it, and like, other than what I do now, the job that I liked the most in my life was when I worked third shift at a 7-Eleven.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. I met people, I talked to them, had regular customers, so we got to know them over a long period of time in a small town, and it was fun.
That's cool, man.
I'd go back and do it now if the 7-Eleven still existed, but it didn't have a gas station, so it didn't last.
All right, dude. That was a great segment. I love that. That's a good one. So let's shift to the next segment of the show called the 3-2-1 pivot.
Okay.
If you have a pivot, your life's going one direction, something knocks it off track a little bit in a good way, and you start going a different direction. So a pivot book. So let's go 3 of them. 3 books that have changed the direction of your life.
Wait, what are your books called again? Like, I'm gonna just use all yours.
No bad days.
No bad days. How to make everyone every day great. Yeah. No, for real, like, I mean, I already mentioned one of them, which was the Brian Murray book.
Yeah, crushing it.
Yeah, because that's when I went from doing all single family to almost all commercial real estate.
Shout out to Brian Murray, my business partner at Open Door Capital.
Yeah, Brian Murray.
Man.
He is a good man. I met him once. I told him that his book changed my life, so I felt good about that. Rich Dad Poor Dad, I think everyone probably mentions that. I mean, I read that when it first came out almost, like in the late 90s, something like that, and it got me thinking about like business. It caused me to make decisions that built the foundation so that I was able to do the real estate thing when I was ready to do it. So those are the 2 that, like, in the business world. But honestly, the book that probably changed my life the most is Michael Crichton's book, Travels. So Michael Crichton's the science fiction author, right? He wrote Jurassic Park and stuff like that. But he wrote his autobiography called Travels. And I reread this book like once every year or 2. I love it. I listen to Audible once a year. I read the book physically like once every year or 2. And he just had an extraordinary life. He did extraordinary things. And he did things like he was a medical doctor. He was a Harvard-trained medical doctor. And he, obviously he I mean, maybe it's not obvious, but he never practiced medicine. He wrote novels when he was in med school and became famous. and then he wrote movies and TV shows. He's the only guy to date that had the #1 movie, the #1 TV show, and the #1 book all at the same time.
So ER, Jurassic Park, what was the book? That was #1.
ER, the book was actually Congo.
Congo. Okay.
Yeah, Congo. Yeah. So the movie Jurassic Park, ER, the TV show, and Congo all at the same time, #1.
He was ER?
Yeah, he wrote ER. Yeah, but I mean, it makes sense. He's a medical doctor,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and he's a screenwriter, and he's in Hollywood, and he wrote movies, he wrote TV shows, he wrote
Wow.
books. But it's not just about being like all that creative stuff. It was about how inquisitive he was. So he a lot of stuff I don't agree with in his book, actually. Like, he did this like huge dissertation into like psychic phenomena, and he was convinced that there were, psychics were real. I don't know if that's true or not. And he was talking about seeing auras and like going out in the desert and talking to cactuses, right? Like weird stuff. But he also talked about traveling the world and meeting people and doing really interesting things and like climbing Kilimanjaro and like learning to scuba dive. And those things impacted me. Like, I climbed Kilimanjaro because of that book.
That's cool.
Right? Like in 2020. I mean, and that was a life-changing event in and of itself. One of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. Didn't know if I was going to make it the whole time. Like, I never really thought I would make it. And I just kept thinking, I just got to do just 10 more steps and then I can quit, 10 more steps and I can quit. And you do that long enough and you get there.
Yeah.
And I think about that regularly. When I'm challenged or something, I think, well, I can do this. I made it to the top of Kilimanjaro, 19,300 feet. It's super high.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And it was because of that book. Like, I would have never even thought of Kilimanjaro if I hadn't read that book. I would have never become a scuba diver if it hadn't been for that book. Or I might not have for a long time. Like, I did it a lot earlier because of that. And I feel like authors, like I actually, it set me on a trajectory of reading other books, like autobiographies of authors. I find it fascinating because authors live these like really interesting lives because they have like this weird time freedom, right? Work on a book for a long time and then don't work for a while, right? And I thought, I love that. Like, I love that time freedom. And this is the book that really inspired me to try to craft a life that fit what worked for me. And that's what I liked about, like, if you read about Hemingway, I mean, Hemingway, he was in 2 plane crashes. It's like one week he's like, shooting like big game in Africa. I'm not a super fan of that, but like, that's what he wanted to do. And another week he's fishing in Cuba. And another week he's like, whatever, right? Doing war correspondence in like, in Spain during the Spanish Civil War, and it's like when you start thinking about people that live these kind of like crazy lives, it just sent me down this trajectory of reading a lot of autobiographies of like people doing really interesting things. And that's kind of what I aspire to do, is like just live a really interesting life. Like, my life goal that I think all stems from that is to be an old guy at a bar and have like some young 21-year-old kid next to me be interested enough in what I did in my life that he's talking to me. Like, I feel like if I'm an old guy at a bar and the kids are still talking to me, I won life.
Beautiful,
Awesome.
man.
Love that. Next question. Who are 2 people that have changed the direction of your life?
You guys maybe have never heard of these guys, but Cam and Brandon.
Thank you.
Love it.
Yeah,
Thank
you
know.
guys
Oh,
have changed the trajectory of my life. I think everyone should answer it that way. There's really no other.
No other good answer.
I judge them. If they
Yeah,
don't,
that's
so.
just right. I mean, like, there's so many people that have impacted my life. Wow, that's a great question. So, I'd like to say my parents, they definitely had an impact on my life. But if I really
You
want
wouldn't be
to,
here without him.
yeah, well, I would assume not. Yeah, like, I would assume not. No, you know what? I had my boss from 7-Eleven had a big impact on my life. My parents went through a divorce. I mentioned that earlier. And my boss from 7-Eleven, I'm still really good friends with him now. He was like a stand-in father for me for a long time. When I had issues with my own parents, I mean, we're great now, but like, there were times when I was a teenager where I just wasn't really close to my dad or my mom. And it was good to have that in my life, like a stability, like somebody to like exemplify like what a good family looks like, because his family was really solid. And so that meant a lot to me. So I really do think that. And he gave me the opportunity to travel. Like, he would let me take a month off to go to Europe backpacking and then come back and go back to work. He gave me that flexibility, even though he never traveled. Like he's the kind of guy that like he would take his family to spring break in Alabama every year, and that was their one trip, and he's never been anywhere else. In fact, he went when his wife got a free trip to Oahu for like her work. He went to Hawaii one time and he came back and he was like, "Oh, I love Hawaii. Hawaii is so great." And I'm like, compared to? Like, you know, where have you been? Like, you know, like, and he still doesn't understand. I texted him a picture of, I was in Tokyo last week or 2 weeks ago, and I texted him a picture of a 7-Eleven in Tokyo, and he goes, "Where's that?" I go, "Tokyo." He goes, "Man, you get around a lot. I don't know why. I don't know why you'd want to do that." And I'm like, "I don't know why you don't want to do it." But he lived his life the way he wanted, and I think that's really good. So it really did help me. So him, and then you know, honestly, my ex-father-in-law would be the other person that really stepped up like that. And, you know, I'm really close to him now. He still invests in a lot of my syndications and stuff. Cool. And, you know, I talk to him about once a week still to this day. So
that's great, man.
And again, both the same thing, right? Like a good example of what a family man should be, good Christian man. And I needed those role models at that time. And, you know, I've known him for, you know, I was married for 20 years. So like, you know, I've known him for 25 years now or something like that. So
cool, man. Love it. Past, present, future?
Well, one pivot quote.
Oh, shoot. You're right. I screwed that one up. What's one pivot quote in your life? Something that's changed the direction of your life?
Pivot quote. So there's this, I think it's Richard Branson, but I have never been able to find the quote back. I read it somewhere and I swear it was in a Richard Branson book, but it like Googled the crap out of it. I can't find it. But the way I remember it, so it's paraphrased a little bit, was that the difference between successful people and those who never succeed is that successful people take action without all of the possible information. And that really changed my life, because I was like, wait a minute, like, I don't need to learn everything. I just need to learn, and I got to do my due diligence, but at some point I have to take that leap of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
Now it's time for
past, present, future.
Past, present, future.
Past, present, future. So we're going to look at your past first. So if you could go
the
back.
year 2000.
It's the year 2000. You're 20 years old, or however old you are in 2000.
Close. 22.
Close. 22. You're 22 years old. What are you telling 22-year-old Jeff? Like, what advice are you going to give that guy?
Buy Bitcoin.
Buy Bitcoin. Yeah.
Perfect.
No, I don't know. For real, like I would just say, don't wait. Like that's the real advice to give any young person. It's like, if you have hopes, dreams, stuff like that, you don't know how long you have. You can't bank on your health. So don't wait. Just go do the things that you want to do now. You only get that one chance.
Love that.
Good answer. Present. What is something you've done in the last year that's given you a better life? Could be habit, action, trait, routine.
No, I really just want to say came to Maui and hung out with you guys.
Yeah. Last night was pretty epic.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
I walked out of there with $0.
Yeah.
Did you really? Dude, I walked out with almost double my money.
Yeah, Brandon got all of our money.
With horse race?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brandon got all of our money.
Yeah.
I had $44 left.
Yeah.
You were spending a lot on horse race.
Well, yeah.
Every time you rolled, it was a 4.
Every time I got the worst number. I had the worst luck ever. I mean, fortunately, it was essentially no money in real life. It was all fake money, so it didn't really matter.
But it was real money. You had to pay $100. Man.
Yeah, it was $100 though. I mean, it was like
that's $100.
I mean, it's $100. You're right.
It's $100.
So I lost $56. But in fairness, 6 of those 56 went for tips to the bartender.
Okay, there you go.
So I don't feel so bad. It's 50. And last time I was there, I won like
and the
$4.
drinks were free. So
yeah,
really,
and like I had enough that I probably broke even.
You came out
broke even.
If you're drinking somewhere down here in Maui, those are
you're right. I came out ahead.
$13
Maui drinks, I definitely came out ahead. Yeah.
All right, so that's your answer, is hanging out in Maui with us. You got anything else?
Yeah, I mean, things that I've done in the last year that have really been impactful is like I really have been focusing on writing again. Like started writing another book. I started thinking a lot about my life, because, you know, I went through some pretty big life changes in the last couple of years. The divorce is obviously one of them. I mean, I didn't expect that. So, so I spent a lot of time thinking about, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? Like, you know, I intend to live to be an old guy at a bar, but that might only be 40 more years, right? Like that's, you know, and I mean, 40 years is not 0 years, but like, that means I'm halfway done, right? So if I'm halfway done, like, what do I want to do with the other half of my life? I've lived really well. I want to make sure that the next part is even better.
Awesome.
Cool.
Love that. And then last, what do you want people to say about you when you are gone?
That I lived well. You know, I think that's the real thing. Like if you know, like I had a coach a long time ago that said to write your own eulogy. And I really struggled with this. Like, what would I want people to say at my funeral? And I would like them to say that I was an extraordinary person that had an extraordinary life, that did extraordinary things, and that I did the things that I wanted to do, and I did it in a way that left the world a little bit better.
Yeah.
Cool. Beautiful.
Love that.
Well, let's wrap it up, man. What are you
Cool.
excited about? What's coming up in your life personally and professionally?
Well, you mentioned at the beginning, I have that 50-50-57 goal, 50
Mhm.
countries, 50 states, and 7 continents before I turn 50. I'm 46, so I want to get that done. So I'm really excited about travel the next couple of years.
Where are you at on the list?
50 states are done, 7 continents are done. And I hit my 41st country last week when I landed in South Korea. So I hit 4 countries in the last
Mhm.
month. So that's been really cool. But yeah, so I got 41 countries. So I need 9 more countries in the next 4 years. I think it's doable.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about, I'm honestly, I am excited about everything in my life. I love my life. Like I really do.
Yeah.
I love everything about it. I do extraordinary things all the time and I have so much fun doing it. And I feel like I help people. And if I can help people and have fun and still pay my bills, I don't really care what else happens.
Yeah. Awesome. And then where can people find you? Where can they order your book at? Where can they?
Well, I mean, it's on this website called Amazon. You've probably
Yeah.
heard of it.
Never heard of it.
I mean, actually, it's anywhere books are available.
Uh-huh.
Like, even some Barnes and Nobles carry it, although not nearly as many as I would like, because it'd be better if I was in more Barnes and Nobles. But yeah, I mean, so go request my book at your local
There you
bookstore. That will probably help me more than anything else. But no, Amazon's fine. I mean, it's called No Bad Days: How to Make Every Day Great. And the best way to find me is probably social media or my personal website. Everything's Jeffrey Holst, right? JeffreyHolst.com, @JeffreyHolst. Yeah, so it's pretty easy. And I have this thing I would love to tell you about, which is I have this new life goal called I call it the Billion Good Days Project. And it's my personal goal to create 1 billion good days in my lifetime. So like, if you guys have one extra good day, I get to count that, like, because you met me and you're like, wow, that changed my life. So I'm about to roll out a website, billiongooddays.com. So
Sweet.
that might be a
Cool.
good place to find me too.
Go check it out, everyone. Well, with that said, Mr. Jeff Holst, this has been fun. This has been awesome. It's been real. It's been real fun. So thank you for coming on and joining us today.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes.
It's a great time.
It's a three-way fist bump.
Three-way fist bump, right?
Boom.
And that, my people, is the show. Thank you for tuning in. And hey, before you go, if you enjoyed the episode or if you enjoy the show in general, please consider leaving us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We really do value your feedback and we read the comments. We make future decisions about topics and guests and everything else. Plus, it helps us reach more people the more reviews we get. And last but not least, please head over to social media. Consider friending and following and subscribing to all that stuff at Better Life and my personal page at Beardy Brandon, Instagram, YouTube, and everywhere else. Thank you again for listening. I'm honored that you would bring me along on your journey toward building wealth through real estate investing without losing your soul.